The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional legal, financial, or marketing advice. Email marketing is subject to various international and domestic regulations, including but not limited to the CAN-SPAM Act in the United States, GDPR in Europe, and CASL in Canada. Failure to comply with these regulations or the specific terms of service of your email provider can result in significant legal penalties and the permanent suspension of your digital assets. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified legal or marketing professionals before implementing any strategies discussed in this content. The creator of this video assumes no liability for any actions taken based on the information provided herein. Your Gmail account is currently a ticking time bomb for your business. Most entrepreneurs and small business owners are operating under the dangerous delusion that because they can send a message to their mother or a colleague, they can use that same infrastructure to scale a global brand. Historical trends show that thousands of accounts are flagged, throttled, or permanently deactivated every single day because users fail to understand the fundamental architecture of the Google ecosystem. You think you are saving money by using a free tool, but in reality, you might be burning your brand's reputation to the ground before you even send your first 100 emails. This is not just about sending mail. It is about understanding the gatekeeper of the world's information and why they might view your marketing efforts as a digital virus. In this deep dive masterclass, we are solving the ultimate dilemma for the modern American creator and business owner: how to leverage the world's most powerful email interface without falling into the trap of deliverability death. We are going to strip away the myths and look at the cold, hard data of how Gmail handles mass communication. By the end of this series, you will understand exactly where the line is drawn between a professional outreach strategy and a spambot operation. This is about taking control of your primary communication channel and ensuring that your message actually lands in the inbox of your potential customers, rather than the digital graveyard of the promotions folder or the spam box. To understand why using Gmail for email marketing is such a polarizing topic, we must first look at the psychological landscape of the modern professional. Gmail currently commands a massive portion of the global email market share. For many, the interface is synonymous with the internet itself. It is comfortable, it is intuitive, and most importantly, it feels free. However, the first mistake most people make is failing to distinguish between a personal @gmail.com account and a professional Google Workspace environment. These are two entirely different beasts governed by different sets of rules and technical limitations. When you start a business, the friction of learning a complex platform like MailChimp, Klaviyo, or ActiveCampaign can feel like an insurmountable wall. You already know how to use Gmail. You know how to compose, how to attach files, and how to organize with labels. This familiarity creates a false sense of security. Historical trends in the startup world suggest that the path of least resistance is often the one that leads to the most significant technical debt later on. If you are using a standard @gmail.com address to send marketing blasts, you are immediately signaling to every major internet service provider that you are an amateur. You are essentially trying to run a professional logistics company using a bicycle. It might work for the first mile, but it will collapse under the weight of a real workload. Let us look at the technical architecture. A standard personal Gmail account has a hard limit on the number of recipients you can contact in a 24-hour period. While Google officially cites this as 500 recipients, the reality is far more nuanced. If you attempt to send 500 emails simultaneously through a standard Gmail interface, you will likely trigger an automated security challenge. This is because Gmail was designed for person-to-person communication, not one-to-many broadcasting. When the system detects a sudden spike in outbound volume that does not match the historical behavior of a human user, it assumes the account has been compromised by a botnet. Potential outcomes of this include a temporary lockout where you cannot even access your own calendar or documents, or a permanent suspension that requires a grueling manual appeal process with no human support on the other end. Furthermore, we need to talk about the Promotions tab. This was one of the most significant shifts in the history of email marketing. In 2013, Google introduced the tabbed inbox, and it sent shockwaves through the marketing industry. Suddenly, even legitimate newsletters were being filtered away from the primary inbox. If you are using Gmail to send your marketing, you are playing on Google's home turf. They have the most sophisticated machine learning algorithms in the world designed specifically to categorize your mail. When you send a bulk email through Gmail, the metadata attached to that email screams, marketing. Case studies have shown that emails sent directly through the Gmail web interface without proper authentication protocols like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are almost universally relegated to the promotions or spam folders when sent in volume. The SPF, or Sender Policy Framework, is a technical record you add to your DNS that tells the receiving server that Google is authorized to send mail on your behalf. DKIM, or Domain Keys Identified Mail, adds a digital signature to your emails. DMARC, which stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance, uses both of those to tell receiving servers what to do if the authentication fails. Most Gmail users do not even know these acronyms exist, yet they are the foundation of modern deliverability. If you are using a personal Gmail account, you cannot even set these up properly because you do not own the @gmail.com domain. You are essentially a tenant in a building where you aren't allowed to change the locks or verify your identity to the neighbors. This brings us to the concept of sender reputation. Every time you send an email, the receiving server looks at your score. This score is built over time based on how many people open your mail, how many people delete it without opening it, and most critically, how many people click that report spam button. When you use a personal Gmail account for marketing, your reputation is tied to the collective reputation of millions of other users. However, if you trigger a high spam report rate, your specific account is isolated and penalized. Because Gmail is a walled garden, they have more data on your behavior than any other provider. They know if you are copy-pasting the same message to 50 people at once. They know if you are using trigger words like free, money, or urgent. They are watching the velocity of your typing and the intervals between your sends. For the US-based entrepreneur, time is the most valuable resource. The pro of using Gmail is the speed of implementation. You can decide to start an email campaign at 9 a.m. and have your first message sent by 9:05 a.m. There is no credit card required, no complex integration, and no new software to learn. This low barrier to entry is the siren song that leads many businesses into a trap. While the short-term outcome is a sense of productivity, the long-term trend for businesses that stay on this path is a gradual decline in engagement. You might think your list is dead, but in reality, your list just isn't seeing your emails because you have been shadow banned by the very tool you are using to reach them. In this deep dive, we are going to explore the transition from amateur Gmail to professional Google Workspace. We will break down how to use Google's own API to send mail in a way that looks like a human sent it, but at a scale that a human could never achieve. We will look at the specific tools that sit on top of Gmail, like mail merge extensions and CRM integrations, and analyze which ones are safe and which ones will get your account flagged in seconds. This is not about cutting corners. It is about building a professional communication infrastructure that respects the technical boundaries of the world's most popular email service. We are going to look at how the big players use Google's infrastructure to maintain a 99% deliverability rate, and how you can replicate those results without a massive IT department. We are starting at the foundation, understanding that your email is your digital handshake, and if your hand is covered in the grime of poor technical practices, no one is going to want to shake it. Let's get into the mechanics of why Gmail is both the best and worst tool ever created for the modern marketer. To understand the mechanics, we have to look at the psychological comfort of the Gmail interface. For the average American business owner in 2026, the Gmail Compose window is the most familiar digital workspace on the planet. Imagine a small business owner named Alex in Austin, Texas. Alex runs a high-end custom furniture shop. It is March 2026, and he has just finished a successful local pop-up event where he collected 200 email addresses on a clipboard. For Alex, the thought of logging into a complex marketing automation platform feels like learning a second language while his hair is on fire. He already has a Google Workspace account for his business, Alex at austindesigns.com. He knows how to hit compose, he knows how to drag in a high-resolution photo of his latest walnut dining table, and he knows how to click send. The immediate pro here is the lack of a learning curve. Historical trends show that the primary reason small businesses fail to implement email marketing is not a lack of content, but a high barrier to technical entry. By using Gmail, Alex eliminates that barrier. There is no onboarding sequence, no API keys to verify, and no complicated template builders that break on mobile devices. In Gmail, what you see is what you get. The email looks like a personal message from one human to another, which in 2026 is the holy grail of digital marketing. As AI-generated noise reaches a fever pitch, a plain-text, personal-looking email from a recognized local business owner often sees higher open rates than a flashy, over-designed newsletter. This is the home field advantage of the Gmail ecosystem. However, this simplicity is a double-edged sword that hides a massive technical liability. Let us look at the potential outcomes for Alex if he tries to scale this approach. He decides to BCC those 200 people from his pop-up event. On the surface, it seems like he just saved a $40 monthly subscription fee for a dedicated email service. But behind the scenes, Google's 2026 anti-spam algorithms, which are now powered by real-time neural networks, are analyzing his sending behavior. When Alex hits send on a single message with 200 BCC recipients, he is triggering a massive red flag. In the eyes of an automated security system, there is very little difference between a local furniture maker and a botnet distributing malware. A historical case study of a boutique fitness studio in Chicago provides a sobering look at this reality. In early 2025, the owner tried to send a New Year's promotion to 900 members using a standard Gmail workspace account. Within 4 hours of the send, the account was flagged for suspicious activity. Because the studio owner was using her primary business email for this blast, she was locked out of her entire Google ecosystem. She could not access her Google Calendar to see her class schedule, she could not open Google Drive to view her payroll spreadsheets, and her staff could not receive incoming client inquiries. The potential outcome of a single unoptimized bulk send is not just a missed marketing opportunity, it is a total operational paralysis. The second major con involves the lack of an automated unsubscribe mechanism. In 2026, the legal landscape for email marketing in the United States has become increasingly rigid. If Alex sends those 200 emails manually and fails to include a functional, one-click unsubscribe link, he is technically in violation of the evolved CAN-SPAM regulations. While he might think a line saying "reply to this email to be removed" is sufficient, modern inbox providers view the lack of a coded unsubscribe header as a hallmark of a low-quality sender. When users cannot find an easy way to opt out, they do not reply. They click the report spam button. This is the fastest way to destroy your sender reputation. Every time a recipient marks Alex's email as spam, his domain score takes a hit. Eventually, even his one-to-one emails to his suppliers or his accountant will start going straight to their spam folders. Now, let's look at the data regarding deliverability and engagement. Gmail is designed for dialogue, not broadcasting. This means Google's algorithms prioritize what they call the interaction ratio. If you send an email to 500 people and only 2 people reply, your interaction ratio is abysmal. Dedicated email marketing platforms like Klaviyo or Behave allow you to send from a subdomain or a dedicated IP, which insulates your primary business communication from your marketing efforts. When you use Gmail, you are putting your primary domain's reputation on the line every single time you hit send. If your interaction ratio stays low for too long, your domain can be blacklisted by major internet service providers. Once you are on a blacklist, it can take months of technical labor and significant financial investment to clean up your record. Step by step, here is how the degradation usually happens. Step 1. You send a bulk BCC email from your Gmail account. Step 2. 5 people on that list have changed their email addresses, resulting in 5 hard bounces. Step 3. Google's system sees those bounces and realizes you are sending to an unmanaged or purchased list. Step 4. 3 more people mark the email as spam because they forgot they signed up at your event. Step 5. Google's AI lowers your sender rank. Step 6. The next time you send an individual invoice to a high-paying client, it lands in their junk folder, and you don't get paid on time. This is the hidden cost of free tools. Despite these risks, there is a reason why the pro column still exists. In 2026, many creators are using Gmail in conjunction with sophisticated mail merge extensions. These tools sit on top of the Gmail API and attempt to circumvent the BCC issue by sending emails individually, one by one, with slight delays between them. This mimics human behavior. Imagine if Alex used one of these tools to personalize the subject line for each of his 200 contacts, mentioning the specific piece of furniture they were looking at. This creates a highly personal feel that a mass marketing tool struggles to replicate. The potential outcome here is a significantly higher conversion rate because the email doesn't look like a newsletter. It looks like a follow-up. But even with these extensions, you are still operating within the strict confines of Google's daily sending limits. In 2026, Google Workspace accounts generally have a limit of 2,000 recipients per day, but that is a maximum, not a suggestion. If you consistently hit that limit, you are placed under a microscope. Furthermore, Gmail provides almost zero analytics compared to professional platforms. You cannot see which links were clicked, you cannot perform A/B split tests on your subject lines, and you cannot see how long a user spent reading your email. You are essentially flying blind in a world where data is the most important currency. Think about the long-term historical trends of your business growth. If your goal is to stay a small, one-man operation forever, Gmail might be a viable, albeit risky, temporary solution. But if you plan to grow your list to 5,000, 10,000, or 50,000 subscribers, the Gmail infrastructure will eventually fail you. It is a ceiling that you will hit headfirst at full speed. The transition from a Gmail-based system to a professional ESP is much more painful when you have to migrate a damaged domain reputation. We have looked at the surface-level pros of familiarity and the deep-seated cons of technical risk. But there is a secret middle ground that the top 1% of digital marketers are using to get the deliverability of a personal Gmail account with the power of a professional automation suite. There is a specific way to warm up a Google Workspace domain so that the algorithms treat your marketing blasts like a personal note from a friend. If you don't understand the concept of IP warming and the specific API thresholds Google set for 2026, you are essentially gambling with your business's ability to communicate. What happens when your emails stop landing? What do you do when the very tool you rely on for every aspect of your business decides you are a threat to their ecosystem? In the next part, we are going to dive into the specific, hidden metrics that Google uses to track your sender behavior, including the one number you've never heard of that determines whether you live or die in the inbox. We are going to break down the exact settings in your Google Admin Console that can either protect you or leave you wide open to a permanent ban. You need to know what is happening behind the curtain before you send your next message. The Google Admin Console is the cockpit of your entire professional identity, yet most users treat it like a dusty storage room they never enter. If you are using Google Workspace in 2026, failing to configure your backend settings is the equivalent of flying a commercial jet without a flight plan. You might stay in the air for a while, but you are almost certain to crash into the mountain of spam filters that protect modern inboxes. Let us look at Sarah, a specialized consultant in Seattle. It is May 2026, and Sarah has spent 3 years building a high-value list of 1,200 potential corporate clients. She uses Google Workspace for her business. Sarah at https://www.google.com/search. Q equals seattleconsulting.com. She is smart, she is professional, and she provides immense value. However, Sarah made the mistake of assuming that because she pays for her account, Google would automatically handle her technical deliverability. Sarah decided to send out a monthly deep dive industry report. She didn't use a BCC blast. She used a popular mail merge tool that sends emails one by one through her Gmail account. On the surface, this looks like a safe approach. But Sarah had never touched her DNS settings. In 2026, the major inbox providers, including Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, have moved to a mandatory authentication model. Without 3 specific records in your Google Admin Console and your domain's DNS provider, your marketing emails are essentially unverified digital noise. The first record you must master is the Sender Policy Framework, or SPF. Think of SPF as a guest list for a high-security event. When Sarah's email hits a recipient's server, that server checks her domain's DNS records to see if the IP address sending the email is authorized. To set this up correctly in 2026, you go to your DNS provider, likely someone like Cloudflare, Namecheap, or Google Domains, and add a TXT record. The standard value for Google Workspace is v equals SPF1 include _https://www.google.com/search. Q equals spf.google.com all. This tells the world that Google is officially allowed to speak on behalf of https://www.google.com/search Q equals =seattleconsulting.com. If this record is missing, the receiving server sees Sarah's email as a potential spoofing attempt. Potential outcomes include the email being rejected outright or, more likely, being routed to the spam folder before the recipient even knows it exists. But SPF is just the foundation. You also need domain keys identified mail, or DKIM. This is a cryptographic signature that attaches a digital seal to every email Sarah sends. In your Google Admin Console, you navigate to Apps, then Google Workspace, then Gmail, and finally authenticate email. Here you generate a 2048-bit DKIM key. You then take this long string of alphanumeric characters and add it as another TXT record in your DNS settings. This signature proves that the content of the email hasn't been tampered with in transit. In 2026, an email without a DKIM signature is viewed with extreme suspicion by AI-driven security filters, as it is a hallmark of low-effort phishing campaigns. The final piece of this technical trinity is DMARC, which stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. This is the policy that tells receiving servers what to do if the SPF or DKIM checks fail. If Sarah doesn't have a DMARC record, she is leaving her domain's reputation to chance. A basic DMARC record looks like V equals DMARC1, P equals none, RUA equals mailtoadmin@yourdomain.com. The P equals none policy is in observation mode, while P equals quarantine or P equals reject are more aggressive stances that protect your domain from being used by hackers. In 2026, having a functional DMARC record is not just a best practice. It is a requirement for anyone sending more than a few dozen emails a day to Gmail or Yahoo addresses. Historical trends show that domains without DMARC see a 25% to 40% lower deliverability rate in professional environments. Now, let us talk about the hidden metric that Google uses to track Sarah's performance: Google Postmaster Tools. This is a separate, free service provided by Google that gives you a glimpse into how their algorithms perceive your domain. Most Gmail marketers don't even know this exists. When Sarah connects her domain to Postmaster Tools, she can see her IP reputation, her domain reputation, and most importantly, her spam rate. In 2026, Google has a very strict threshold. If your spam report rate exceeds 0.3%, or 3 reports for every 1,000 emails sent, your domain reputation will plummet. Sarah's potential outcome in this scenario was a slow-motion disaster. Because she hadn't configured her SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, and wasn't monitoring her reputation in Postmaster Tools, her domain reputation dropped from high to medium, and then to low over the course of 3 months. She didn't realize it because she wasn't getting bounce-back errors. Her emails were simply being delivered to the Promotions tab, or the junk folder. She was shouting into a void she didn't know existed. This is why the technical setup is the most critical step in using Gmail for marketing. You cannot fix a reputation once it is destroyed as easily as you can set it up correctly the first time. Beyond the authentication records, we must address the 2026 burst limit. While Google Workspace allows up to 2,000 sends per day, the velocity at which you send those emails is a major factor in account health. If Sarah's mail merge tool attempts to send all 1,200 emails in a 10-minute window, it triggers a rate limit error. This is different from a daily limit. It is an anti-spam measure designed to stop automated scripts. To avoid this, you must implement a staggering or throttling strategy. This means sending one email every 60 to 90 seconds. This mimics human behavior. A human being cannot send 1,200 personalized emails in 10 minutes, and Google knows this. Case studies of successful Gmail marketers show that those who spread their sends over an 8-hour window maintain a much higher sender reputation than those who try to blast their list in one go. Another critical factor in 2026 is the interaction to spam ratio. Google's AI doesn't just look at who marked you as spam. It looks at who interacted with your mail. If you send an email and the recipient moves it from the Promotions tab to the Primary tab, that is a massive positive signal for your domain reputation. If they reply to the email, your reputation receives an even bigger boost. This is why the best marketers using Gmail always include a call to action that encourages a reply. Instead of just saying "click here to read my report," Sarah should say, "reply to this email with the word report, and I'll send you the PDF directly." This creates a high interaction ratio, signaling to Google that her emails are wanted and valuable. However, there is a limit to how much you can optimize a standard Gmail environment. Even with perfect SPF, DKIM, and DMARC and a high interaction ratio, you are still limited by the fundamental nature of the platform. Gmail is a tool for personal and professional correspondence, not a mass-market delivery engine. As Sarah's business grows, she will eventually face the problem of list management. Gmail does not have an automated way to handle bounces or to clean inactive subscribers. If Sarah keeps sending emails to addresses that no longer exist, her bounce rate will climb. In 2026, a bounce rate over 2% is a signal to Google that you are using a stale or low-quality list, which will eventually lead to your emails being throttled. Imagine if Sarah's list grew to 5,000 people. At that point, sending through Gmail becomes a full-time technical management job, rather than a marketing activity. The time spent monitoring Postmaster Tools, managing throttled sends, and manually cleaning the list would far outweigh the cost of a dedicated marketing platform. This is the inflection point where the pros of using Gmail, simplicity and cost, are completely eclipsed by the cons of technical overhead and risk. But what if you are just starting out? What if you have a list of 50 or 100 high-value prospects and you want to ensure you land in their primary inbox every single time? There is a specific process called domain warming that is essential in 2026 before you send a single marketing email. If you skip this, you are essentially walking into a lion's den with a stake tied around your neck. In the next part, we are going to break down the exact 14-day warm-up schedule you need to follow to prime your Google Workspace account for success. We will also discuss the third-party tools that can automate this process, and the one specific setting in Gmail that can accidentally leak your private data to every recipient on your list. You cannot afford to skip the warm-up, and you certainly cannot afford the security breach we are about to discuss. The security breach we are discussing is not a hack from an outside party, but a self-inflicted wound caused by how Google manages its unified profile system in 2026. Imagine a real estate agent in Miami named Mike. It is June 2026, and Mike has just purchased a new Google Workspace account to launch a campaign for a luxury condo development. He sets up Mike at miamihaven.com and immediately starts using a mail merge tool to reach out to 300 high-net-worth individuals. Because Mike is using the same Google account profile that he uses for his YouTube, Google Photos, and personal identity, he accidentally leaves his About Me settings set to public. In 2026, Gmail's interface has a feature called the hover card. When a recipient receives an email from Mike, they can hover over his name and see not just his professional headshot, but his personal phone number, his home office location pinned on Google Maps, and even his personal recovery email address if his privacy toggles are incorrect. This is a catastrophic leak of private data that occurs because Google treats every recipient of your email as a potential contact. If your workspace is not strictly partitioned, your marketing efforts are essentially broadcasting your personal dossiers to every lead on your list. Historical trends show that as privacy regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act evolved into the mid-2020s, the burden of data protection shifted heavily onto the sender. If Mike's recipients are in a regulated state, this accidental exposure of his own data could also lead to a technical violation of his own security protocols, making him look amateurish at best and compromised at worst. To prevent this, you must go to your Google account settings, navigate to People and Sharing, and then About Me. You have to manually ensure that every single field is set to only you or your organization. This is a step-by-step necessity that 90% of Gmail marketers skip. They assume that because they are in a business account, their personal data is walled off. It is not. The Google ecosystem is built on connectivity, and in 2026, that connectivity is more aggressive than ever. If you are using Gmail for marketing, your personal security is directly tied to your technical configuration. Now let us address the one thing that will determine if your emails even reach that hover cart stage. The 14-day domain warming protocol. In 2026, you cannot simply buy a domain, set up Google Workspace, and start emailing. If you do, you are entering the sandbox. This is a period of high scrutiny where Google's AI monitors every single outbound message for signals of legitimacy. Case studies of successful outbound campaigns in 2026 show that the first 14 days are the most critical period for any new sender. If you fail the warm-up, your domain reputation is essentially born in the gutter. Day 1 through 3 of your warm-up should involve no more than 10 emails per day. These should not be marketing emails. They should be manual one-to-one messages to people you know will reply. This is crucial because Google is looking for two-way traffic. If you send 10 emails and get 0 replies, your interaction ratio is 0. If you get 10 replies, you are signaling to the algorithm that you are a trusted communicator. Day 4 through 7 is the ramp-up phase. You can increase your volume to 25 emails per day. During this phase, you should start subscribing to high-authority newsletters. Why? Because receiving emails is just as important as sending them. A healthy inbox is an active inbox. When you receive a newsletter from a major publication and move it from the Promotions tab to your primary folder, you are telling Google that this account is being used by a real human who manages their mail. This is a historical trend that has become a hard requirement in 2026. Day 8 through 11 involves increasing to 50 emails per day. At this stage, you should use a dedicated warming service. These services use a network of thousands of other accounts to send and receive emails from your domain automatically. These accounts are programmed to open your emails, mark them as important, and reply to them. Potential outcomes of using a warming service include a 40% increase in deliverability within the first month. However, you must be careful. In 2026, Google has started to identify low-quality warming networks that use repetitive, AI-generated text. If your warming emails look like gibberish, Google will flag your account for artificial engagement. You need a service that uses high-quality, varied content that mimics natural human language. Day 12 through 14 is where you reach 100 emails per day. At this point, you are testing the waters of bulk communication. You should monitor your Google Postmaster tools daily. If you see your domain reputation stay at high or medium, you are ready to transition into your actual marketing campaign. But if you see it dip into low or bad, you must stop immediately and return to day 1. This 14-day protocol is not a suggestion, it is a defensive wall. If Mike from Miami had followed this, his condo campaign would have landed in the primary inboxes of those 300 prospects. Instead, because he skipped the warm-up, his emails were flagged as suspicious by the receiving servers of major banks and investment firms. These institutions have the highest security settings in the world, and they do not tolerate unverified, unwarmed domains. But even with a warm domain and a lockdown profile, there is a technical limit that Gmail imposes that can stop your business in its tracks. This is the API request quota. If you are using a third-party mail merge tool, that tool is talking to Google's servers through an API. In 2026, Google has significantly throttled the number of API calls a standard workspace account can make per minute. If your tool is too aggressive, Google won't just block the email. They will revoke the tool's access to your account entirely. You will wake up to an email saying your third-party access has been disabled, and your entire campaign will be dead in the water. Imagine the frustration of having your perfect lead list ready, your domain warmed, and your security tightened, only to have your software disconnected because you didn't understand the rate limits. This brings us to a major crossroad in our masterclass. Is it better to send through the Gmail web interface? Or is there a way to use Gmail servers without ever touching the Gmail UI? There is a specific method involving SMTP relays that most marketers completely overlook. It allows you to bypass the daily 2000 limit while still benefiting from the high trust of Google's IP addresses. However, using an SMTP relay comes with a set of risks that could lead to your entire Google Workspace organization being suspended without notice. If you don't know the difference between a direct send and a relay send, you are playing with digital fire. In the next part, we are going to break down the exact steps to setting up a Google SMTP relay and the 3 hidden triggers that will cause Google's security team to manually audit your account. We are also going to reveal the specific word list of 2026 spam triggers that will land you in the Promotions tab, even if your technical setup is perfect. You need to know these words because some of them are common marketing terms you are probably using right now. The word list that defines your deliverability in 2026 has moved far beyond the obvious scams of the early 2000s. Google's neural networks now employ a technique called semantic intent analysis. This means the algorithm isn't just looking for a single word. It is looking for the gravitational pull of your entire sentence structure. However, there are still high-risk anchors that act as immediate triggers for the Promotions tab or the dreaded spam folder. Imagine a fitness coach in Denver named Jordan. It is August 2026, and Jordan is launching a new online coaching program. He drafts an email with the subject line, "Final chance to claim your exclusive discount before it expires tonight." To a human, this sounds like a standard marketing nudge. To Google's 2026 filters, this is a 5-alarm fire. The word claim is one of the most penalized verbs in the modern inbox. Historical trends indicate that claim is statistically associated with low-value offers and phishing attempts. When you pair it with exclusive discount, you are layering 2 high-risk semantic markers. In 2026, discount is a word that almost universally triggers the Promotions tab, regardless of your sender reputation. If your goal is the primary inbox, you have to find linguistic workarounds. Instead of claim your discount, a high-performance marketer in 2026 might use phrases like access the updated pricing or view the adjusted rates. These phrases carry the same meaning to the reader, but lack the aggressive sales signature that Google's AI is trained to suppress. Other words on the 2026 danger list include giveaway, winner, act now, and 100% free. While these seem harmless, case studies from high-volume senders show that these specific strings of characters result in a 15% to 20% higher probability of being filtered out of the primary inbox. Google's objective is to protect the user experience, and their data shows that users rarely want to see Act Now in their primary personal correspondence. If you are using Gmail for marketing, you are trying to blend in with personal emails. Personal emails do not use the phrase "act now." They use phrases like "let me know when you can" or "check this out." The shift in 2026 is from high-pressure sales copy to conversational engagement. Now, let us look at the technical escape hatch that many advanced users try to use: the Google SMTP relay. This is where Jordan from Denver decides he is tired of the 2000 send limit and the interface of Gmail. He wants to use his own software, but he wants to ride on the back of Google's world-class mail servers. An SMTP relay is essentially a bridge. You tell your marketing software to send the mail, but instead of that software delivering the mail directly, it hands the mail over to Google and Google sends it out. This sounds like the ultimate solution because you get Google's high-trust IP addresses without being stuck in the Gmail browser window. To set this up in 2026, you must navigate to your Google Admin Console, go to Apps, Google Workspace, and then Settings for Gmail. At the very bottom, under Advanced Settings, you will find the SMTP Relay service. Step 1 is to identify your sending source. You can choose to allow any IP address to send as long as they authenticate with the username and password, or you can restrict it to specific static IP addresses. For a professional setup in 2026, the potential outcome of using static IP authentication is much more stable. This tells Google that only your specific server is allowed to use this relay, which adds a layer of security that their algorithms love. Step 2 is deciding whether to require TLS encryption. In 2026, this is not optional. If you attempt to use the relay without a secure TLS connection, Google will likely drop your connection or flag your mail as insecure. Once the relay is configured, you take the settings, usually https://www.google.com/search?q=SMTP-relay.gmail.com on port 587, and plug them into your marketing tool. This allows Jordan to send his coaching program updates to thousands of people, while still having the sarah@denverfit.com address in the from field. But here is where the trap is set. Many people believe the SMTP relay is a way to bypass Google's spam rules. It is actually the opposite. Because the relay is intended for transactional mail, things like password resets or shipping notifications, Google's filters for the relay are actually more sensitive to marketing language. If Jordan starts sending his Act Now and Claim Your Discount emails through the SMTP relay, he triggers a manual audit flag. Historical trends show that Google is much more likely to suspend a Workspace account for abusing the relay than for abusing the standard web interface. This is because the relay has the potential to do much more damage to Google's overall IP reputation. A manual audit in 2026 is a nightmare scenario. It means a human reviewer at Google or a highly specialized AI agent looks at the patterns of your outbound mail. They aren't just looking at the words. They are looking at the source of your list. If they see that you are sending through the relay to hundreds of addresses that are bouncing, or addresses that have never interacted with your domain before, they will classify your account as a high-risk entity. The potential outcome is a permanent suspension of your entire workspace, meaning you lose your email, your documents, and your ability to log into any service connected to that account. Imagine Jordan waking up on a Monday morning to find that his Denver Fit business has been effectively erased from the internet. He can't contact his current clients, he can't see his upcoming appointments, and he can't even access the marketing list he worked so hard to build. This is the danger of the SMTP relay. If you don't understand the rules of the game, the relay is a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. It must be used with extreme precision and only for high-value, highly targeted communication. To avoid a manual audit, you must maintain a near-perfect sender profile. This means your bounce rate through the relay must be under 0.5%. In 2026, this requires using a real-time email verification tool before you even upload your list to your sending software. These tools ping the recipient's server to see if the address is active without actually sending an email. If Jordan had used one of these, he would have filtered out the dead accounts from his list, keeping his bounce rate low and staying under Google's radar. Furthermore, the 2026 SMTP environment requires a specific header configuration. You must ensure that your list unsubscribe header is properly formatted. This is a piece of code hidden in the metadata of the email that allows the inbox provider to show a prominent unsubscribe button at the top of the app. If you are using the relay and you don't include this, you are effectively telling Google that you are a spammer. In the eyes of the 2026 algorithm, a legitimate marketer makes it as easy as possible for people to leave their list. We have covered the words that get you flagged and the relay that can get you banned. But there is a deeper layer to this. Google is now tracking the engagement of your links with a level of detail that was previously impossible. In 2026, they aren't just checking if a link is malicious, they are checking the reputation of the domain you are linking to. If you link to a website that has poor security or a history of spam, your email is guilty by association. What if you are linking to your own website, but your website's reputation is what's dragging your emails down? How do you diagnose a sick domain in 2026? And what are the 3 specific link tracking mistakes that almost every Gmail marketer makes that result in an instant trip to the spam folder? In the next part, we are going to dive into the world of URL shorteners, tracking pixels, and the link-to-text ratio. If you have ever used a link like bit.ly or a custom tracking link in your Gmail marketing, you might be sabotaging yourself without even knowing it. We are going to show you how to audit your links to ensure they are helping, not hurting your deliverability. Links are the nervous system of your digital marketing strategy. In 2026, they are the primary indicator Google's spam filters use to determine the intent of your message. Every time you embed a URL into a Gmail sent message, you are not just providing a path to your website. You are handing over a digital fingerprint that Google's neural networks will scrutinize with intense precision. To master Gmail marketing, you must understand that the algorithm is looking for any sign that the message is a broadcast advertisement rather than a personal communication. Imagine a small business owner in Chicago named Chloe, who runs a specialized e-commerce store for eco-friendly office supplies. It is July 2026. Chloe is using her Google Workspace account to send out her monthly product updates. She has spent months warming her domain. Her authentication records like SPF and DKIM are perfectly configured, and her content is genuinely helpful. Yet she notices a sudden sharp decline in her open rates. After investigating, the problem isn't her words or her sender reputation. The problem is her links. Because Chloe wanted to track every single movement of her audience, she used a popular public URL shortener for every call to action. Historically, URL shorteners like bit.ly or Tinural were the industry standard. In 2026, however, using a public multi-tenant URL shortener within a Gmail-based marketing campaign is a significant technical liability. These services are used by millions of people, a small percentage of whom are bad actors. When a scammer uses a bit.ly link for a malicious phishing campaign, they contaminate the reputation of that entire shortener domain in the eyes of Google's security filters. When Chloe includes a bit.ly link in her email, Google's AI doesn't just see her specific link. It sees the collective history of every malicious actor who has used that same shortener. The potential outcome is that Chloe's perfectly legitimate email is flagged as a security risk or relegated to the Promotions tab, simply because she shared a digital neighborhood with a criminal. The solution in 2026 is the implementation of branded tracking links. Step by step, Chloe needs to move away from public services and set up a custom tracking domain, such as https://www.google.com/search?q=links chloesupplies.com. This process involves creating a name record in her DNS settings that points her subdomain to her tracking software. This isolates her reputation. Case studies from early 2026 show that switching from public shorteners to branded shorteners can improve primary inbox placement by as much as 18% for workspace users. By owning the domain, you ensure that your deliverability is never compromised by the actions of an unrelated third party. Next, we must look at the link-to-text ratio. This is a metric that remains largely invisible to the average user, but is a core component of Google's 2026 filtering logic. Google's AI analyzes the amount of hyperlinked text compared to the total word count of the email. If your email is 200 words long but contains 10 different links, your link-to-text ratio is dangerously high. In the eyes of an automated system, a high density of links is a hallmark of a commercial flyer, not a personal note. For a personal-feeling email sent through Gmail, historical trends suggest a sweet spot of one link for every 100 to 150 words. If you find yourself needing more calls to action, you are better off repeating the same link in 2 different places rather than adding links to 5 different destinations. There is also the lethal trap of hyperlink mismatching. This occurs when the text of a link does not match the actual destination URL in the code. For example, if Chloe writes out the text as chloesupplies.com/summer-sale, but the actual hyperlink goes to a tracking redirect like links.chloesupplies.com/xyz123, she has created a mismatch. In 2026, this is a massive red flag. Scammers frequently use this tactic to disguise malicious websites behind a familiar-looking name. Even if Chloe's intent is entirely pure, Google's automated systems are programmed to treat any discrepancy between the visible text and the underlying URL as a potential phishing attempt. The rule for 2026 is simple. If you display a URL as the clickable text, it must be the exact destination. For all other tracking purposes, use descriptive text such as "click here to see the collection" or "view the full report." We also need to discuss the impact of tracking pixels and the Gmail image proxy. Every modern email marketing tool uses a one-by-one invisible pixel to track when an email is opened. In 2026, Google's proxy service is more sophisticated than ever. When a recipient opens an email in Gmail, Google's servers download the images, including the tracking pixel, first, and then serve them to the user from Google's own cache. This is a privacy measure, but it also means that if your tracking pixel comes from a domain with a low reputation, Google might block it entirely, giving you a false zero on your analytics. Furthermore, heavy use of tracking pixels and multiple large images increases the total file size of the email. If a message exceeds 102 kilobytes, Gmail will clip the content, hiding the bottom of the email. This is particularly dangerous because it often hides your unsubscribe link, which we have already established is a fast track to being reported as spam. How do you diagnose if your domain is sick? Step by step, you must conduct a link audit. First, open Google Postmaster Tools and check the Domain Reputation tab. If you see a dip that corresponds with a specific campaign, look at the links you used in that campaign. Second, use a domain health tool to check if your URLs have been added to blacklists like Spamhaus or SURBL. In 2026, a sick domain is like a digital virus. If you link to a blacklisted site, even if it is just a partner or an old blog post, your entire email is likely to be quarantined. The potential outcomes of ignoring these link protocols are severe. Beyond just landing in the spam folder, repeated use of high-risk links can lead to a permanent blacklisting of your primary business domain. Imagine the frustration of having your perfect lead list ready, your domain warmed, and your security tightened, only to have your emails disappear because you used a tracking redirect that Google's AI deemed untrustworthy. But there is a final, even more subtle layer to this. Google is now tracking the engagement of your links with a level of detail that was previously impossible. They look at the link-to-spam trigger synergy. This is the relationship between a link and the words immediately surrounding it. If a link is placed right next to a high-pressure term like "buy now" or "exclusive offer," the weight of that spam trigger is magnified. Google's 2026 semantic intent analysis perceives this as a commercial transaction. Conversely, a link embedded in a sentence like "I thought you might find this resource helpful" is treated as a personal recommendation. The context of your links is just as important as the links themselves. What if you have the perfect links, but the visual structure of your email is what's holding you back? Most marketers use heavy, image-laden templates that are a relic of 2015. In 2026, there is a specific golden format for Gmail marketing that exploits a loophole in how Google handles HTML to ensure you bypass the Promotions tab almost every time. In the next part, we are going to break down the exact CSS and HTML limits you must follow to keep your emails looking professional while feeling like a personal message. We will also reveal why the font size of your unsubscribe link could be the secret reason your messages are being suppressed by the algorithm. You cannot afford to get the design wrong after doing all the technical work. The visual architecture of your email is the final filter between the primary inbox and the digital abyss. In 2026, Gmail's rendering engine has become a sophisticated gatekeeper that judges your intent based on the underlying code as much as the words on the screen. Imagine a high-end cybersecurity consultant in Denver named David. It is September 2026, and David is preparing a sophisticated white paper to send to his list of 500 chief information officers. Because David wants to convey a sense of premium authority, he hires a designer to create a complex, multi-column HTML template. It features a high-resolution hero image of a server room, custom-branded buttons with rounded corners, and a footer filled with social media icons and legal fine print. David hits send through his Google Workspace account, confident that his professional design will stand out. Instead, the potential outcome is a total collapse in engagement. David has unknowingly walked into the 102 kilobytes trap. In 2026, the 102 kilobytes clipping limit remains one of the most misunderstood technical hurdles in the Google ecosystem. When the raw HTML source code of an email exceeds 102 kilobytes, Gmail's web and mobile clients automatically truncate the message, hiding everything below that threshold behind a link that says View Entire Message. To the average user, this looks like a technical error. To Google's 2026 spam filters, it is a signal of a low-quality mass broadcast. More importantly, when an email is clipped, the tracking pixel, which is almost always placed at the very bottom of the code, is never loaded. This means David's analytics will show a 0% open rate, even if half his list read the first 2 paragraphs. Furthermore, the mandatory unsubscribe link is usually located in the footer. If that footer is clipped, David is now sending emails that do not have a functional, visible opt-out mechanism, which is a direct violation of the 2026 Gmail sender guidelines. Historical trends show that accounts sending clipped emails see a 30% higher report to spam rate, because frustrated users cannot find the unsubscribe button and simply hit the block button instead. To avoid this, you must master the golden format of 2026, hybrid minimalist HTML. This is a specific way of coding that provides the tracking and styling of HTML with the deliverability and feel of a personal plain text message. The first step in this masterclass is the elimination of bloated CSS. In 2026, Gmail still does not support external style sheets and has limited support for head-embedded styles. Every single style must be inlined directly into the HTML tags. If you use a modern web design framework to build your email, the resulting code is often 5 times larger than it needs to be. For a professional Gmail marketer, the goal is to strip away every unnecessary div and span tag. Case studies of top-tier US marketers in 2026 reveal that the most effective emails follow an 80-20 text-to-image ratio. While the 60-40 rule was the standard for a decade, Google's neural networks now place a higher premium on text-heavy communication. If David had used a single small logo and focused on high-value, plain text analysis, his email size would have stayed under 15 kilobytes, ensuring it was never clipped and felt like a personal consultation rather than a marketing flyer. Historical trends in the US market show that as consumers become more resistant to flashy advertising, the raw, personal-looking email is the one that commands the most attention in 2026. Now, let us look at the specific visual cues that trigger the Promotions tab. Google's 2026 Accessibility AI is now integrated into its spam filtering logic. This AI analyzes the color contrast and font size of your links, specifically your unsubscribe link. There is a common tactic where marketers make the unsubscribe link tiny or change the color to a light gray that blends into the background. In 2026, this is a lethal mistake. If the contrast ratio of your unsubscribe link falls below a certain threshold, or if the font size is smaller than 10 pixels, Google flags the email for deceptive design. Potential outcomes include a temporary shadow ban where all your mail is routed to the spam folder for a 14-day cooling-off period. Step by step, a professional Gmail setup requires a clearly visible, easy-to-click footer. In 2026, the most successful marketers use a standard 12-pixel font for their footer, with a clear blue or underlined link for the opt-out. This signals to Google that you are a transparent, high-trust sender. Imagine if David had simply included a line at the bottom saying, "If you no longer wish to receive these cybersecurity updates, you can opt out here." By making it easy to leave, he actually makes it more likely that Google will let him stay in the primary inbox. Another critical factor in 2026 is the image proxy and alt text synchronization. When David includes an image of a server room, he must include descriptive alt text. However, most marketers use the alt text for hidden keywords or sales pitches. In 2026, Google's computer vision verifies the image against the alt text. If David's alt text says "click here for the best security deals," but the image is actually a server rack, the AI detects a mismatch. This is categorized as an attempt to bypass content filters, and it negatively impacts the domain's trust score. The rule for 2026 is simple. Your images must be what you say they are, and they must be hosted on a reputable high-speed content delivery network. Using a low-quality or blacklisted image host will drag your deliverability down regardless of how good your text is. We must also discuss the technical rendering of fonts. In 2026, Gmail has expanded its support for web fonts, but using them is a deliverability risk. Every time a recipient opens your email, their client has to make a request to a font server, like Google Fonts. If this request is blocked or slow, it can delay the rendering of the message. More importantly, Google's 2026 algorithm views excessive external requests as a potential privacy leak. To stay in the high-trust lane, you should stick to system-safe fonts like Arial, Georgia, or Helvetica. These are rendered locally on the user's device, require zero external requests, and ensure that your email looks exactly the same on an iPhone in New York as it does on a Windows laptop in Seattle. The visual structure of your email is the final layer of your digital handshake. If you get the technical authentication right and you get the warming right but you send a bloated, clipped, and deceptive-looking HTML file, you have wasted all your effort. You are essentially wearing a tuxedo to a backyard barbecue. It feels wrong to the recipient, and it certainly feels wrong to the algorithm. The 2026 golden format is about being invisible. You want the technology to disappear so that the only thing the recipient sees is your message. But even with the perfect design, there is a new, more advanced threat to your Gmail marketing success. Google has recently deployed a system called synthetic content detection. This AI is specifically designed to identify emails that were written by large language models without human intervention. If the algorithm decides your email is 100% AI generated, it doesn't matter how perfect your SPF records or your HTML layouts are. You will be categorized as bulk noise. How does Google know if a human wrote your email? What are the 3 linguistic markers that 2026 AI detectors look for to flag your marketing as synthetic? In the next part, we are going to dive into the world of AI-assisted copywriting and how to bypass the synthetic content filters. We will also reveal the specific prompt engineering techniques that can help you maintain a human-like tone that Google's filters will actually reward with higher deliverability. If you are using AI to write your emails in 2026, you are walking on thin ice, and we are going to show you where the cracks are. In 2026, Google's synthetic content detection is not a simple keyword filter. It is a multi-layered linguistic auditor that operates on the scale of billions of parameters. To understand how to navigate this, we have to look at the concept of probability distribution. When a large language model generates text, it is essentially predicting the most likely next word in a sequence. This results in a mathematical signature characterized by low perplexity and low burstiness. Perplexity refers to how predictable the word choices are, while burstiness refers to the variation in sentence structure and length. Human writing is naturally messy. It contains nonlinear thoughts, varied sentence cadences, and idiosyncratic vocabulary choices that an AI, by its very nature of being trained on averages, tends to smooth out. Imagine a marketing manager in Atlanta named Jason. It is October 2026, and Jason is responsible for the digital outreach of a mid-sized commercial insurance firm. To save time, Jason uses a high-end AI tool to generate his weekly market analysis emails. He copies the output, pastes it into his Gmail Compose window, and sends it to his list of 800 property developers. On the surface, the prose is perfect. It is grammatically flawless and highly professional. However, within 48 hours, Jason noticed that his open rates have plummeted from a steady 35% to a staggering 8%. The potential outcome Jason is experiencing is a direct result of Google's 2026 Content Authenticity Shield. Because Jason's emails lack the linguistic variance of human speech, the algorithm flagged them as high-probability synthetic content. In the 2026 ecosystem, Google treats unedited AI content as a form of sophisticated automated noise. Historical trends from the previous 2 years showed that the volume of AI-generated outreach was beginning to overwhelm the average user's inbox, threatening the very utility of the Gmail platform. In response, Google implemented a hidden score for every outbound message, the synthetic probability index. If your message scores above a certain threshold, it is automatically routed to the Promotions tab, or, if the account has a history of high volume, directly to the spam folder. To avoid Jason's fate, you must implement a strategy of human-in-the-loop editing that focuses on increasing your message's perplexity and burstiness. Step by step, this begins with the injection of personal anecdotes and localized references. In 2026, Google's AI is incredibly good at identifying generic business advice, but it struggles to categorize specific, localized human experiences. If Jason had started his email by mentioning a specific weather event in Atlanta from that morning, or a local construction project on Peachtree Street, he would have immediately lowered his synthetic score. This is because these details are highly specific and less predictable in a global training set. Another critical step is the intentional variation of sentence length. AI models generally produce sentences of relatively uniform length to maintain a perceived flow. To break this pattern, you should manually insert very short, punchy sentences followed by longer, more complex observations. This mimics the natural rhythm of human thought. Case studies of top-tier outbound agencies in 2026 show that adding just 3 or 4 human-edited sentences to an AI-generated draft can improve primary inbox placement by over 40%. We also have to discuss the role of the hidden metadata in 2026. Every time you copy and paste text from an AI interface into Gmail, you risk carrying over invisible formatting characters or CSS artifacts that signal the content's origin. While most modern browsers strip basic formatting, the way text is structured, down to the specific non-breaking spaces or the way bullet points are coded, can act as a digital fingerprint. The most successful Gmail marketers in 2026 use a plain text intermediate step. They paste their AI-generated content into a raw text editor, manually edit for tone and local context, and only then paste it into the Gmail interface. This ensures that the message is technically clean and linguistically unique. Furthermore, we must look at the 2026 personalization paradox. In the past, personalization meant simply inserting the recipient's first name or company name. In 2026, that is the bare minimum and, ironically, can actually increase your synthetic score if it is the only variable in an otherwise static template. Google's AI now looks for semantic personalization. This means the content of the email should reflect a genuine understanding of the recipient's specific situation. Imagine if Jason, instead of sending a generic market update, used his AI to summarize a specific news article relevant to each developer's current project, and then added his own human commentary. This level of deep personalization is nearly impossible to automate perfectly without human oversight, which is exactly why Google's filters reward it. But even with perfectly humanized content, there is a technical limit to how many people Jason can reach from a single Atlanta-based office. This brings us to the most controversial and highly technical aspect of Gmail marketing in 2026, the multi-account infrastructure. Many sophisticated users have realized that if they want to scale their outreach while staying under the radar of the daily send limits and the synthetic content filters, they cannot rely on a single Google Workspace account. They begin to experiment with a strategy known as horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling involves creating a network of multiple Google Workspace domains, each with its own set of authenticated users. However, in 2026, Google's identity graph is more advanced than ever. If you create 5 different domains but manage them all from the same IP address in Atlanta, or use the same recovery phone number, or log into them from the same browser session, Google will link them instantly. Once linked, any negative reputation from one account will bleed into the others. Potential outcomes of a poorly managed multi-account strategy include a total domain group ban, where every business asset you own is blacklisted simultaneously. To execute this correctly, you have to understand the mechanics of digital isolation. This involves using dedicated residential proxies to ensure that each account appears to be operating from a unique location. It involves using hardened browser profiles that do not share cookies or cache. And most importantly, it involves a staggered growth strategy where each account is warmed up independently following the 14-day protocol we discussed earlier. Historical trends show that the most resilient marketing infrastructures are those that are decentralized and appear to be a collection of independent human actors, rather than a single automated machine. Imagine the complexity of managing 10 different Google Workspace accounts, each with its own warming schedule, its own humanized content, and its own technical authentication records. It is a massive undertaking, but for those who master it, the results are unparalleled. They are able to achieve the reach of a major enterprise, while maintaining the intimate deliverability of a personal Gmail account. However, there is one final piece of the puzzle that most people ignore until it is too late. It is the data feedback loop. How do you know if your multi-account strategy is actually working, or if you are just one click away from a total system collapse? Google has a secret set of internal health metrics that they don't show you in Postmaster tools. They are related to the way your accounts interact with each other and the broader Google ecosystem. What are these hidden health markers, and how can you use Google's own transparency reports to find out if your infrastructure is being shadow banned? In the next part, we are going to dive into the world of advanced account analytics and the 3 specific behavior patterns that trigger a silent flagging of your entire digital footprint. We are also going to reveal the exact method for safely retiring and replacing an account before it burns your entire reputation to the ground. You need to know how to rotate your assets before the algorithm catches up with you. The concept of account rotation is the elite defensive maneuver of 2026. To understand why this is necessary, we have to look at the historical trends of how Google's workspace security has evolved over the last 24 months. We are no longer in an era where you can buy a single domain and use it for 5 years without interruption if you are engaging in high-volume outbound communication. Every digital asset has a lifespan. Think of a professional user named Marcus who operates a high-growth software consultancy in San Francisco. It is November 2026, and Marcus has scaled his business by using a cluster of 12 Google Workspace accounts. For 6 months, he saw incredible success, with his primary inbox placement hovering around 92%. But suddenly, without a single warning email or a hard bounce notification, his conversion rates dropped to near zero. Marcus was a victim of what is known as the silent shadow ban, or more technically, the reputation tar pit. In 2026, Google's algorithms do not always block your emails. Instead, they place your domain in a state of artificial latency. Your emails are accepted by the server, which prevents you from seeing a bounce error, but they are then held in a secondary processing queue for hours or even days before being delivered directly to the spam folder. This is designed to frustrate automated senders and protect the end-user experience without giving the sender the data they need to pivot. To Marcus, everything looked fine in his sending software, but in reality, he was ghosting his entire prospect list. The first step-by-step method to diagnose this involves monitoring your user affinity score. This is a 2026 metric that measures the ratio of positive interactions, such as opens, replies, and forwards, against the total number of delivered messages over a rolling 30-day window. If your user affinity score drops below a specific threshold, Google's identity graph begins to flag your account as a commercial parasite. Marcus could have seen this coming if he had been monitoring his Google Transparency Report. Most people think the Transparency Report is only for tracking government data requests, but in 2026 it includes a section on safe browsing and domain status. If Marcus had entered his sending domains into the Safe Browsing Site Status tool, he might have seen a warning that his domain was being flagged for suspicious patterns, even if it was not officially blacklisted. To prevent a total infrastructure collapse, you must implement a formal sunset protocol for your accounts. This is the process of safely retiring an account before its reputation hits the point of no return. Historical trends in 2026 suggest that the optimal lifespan for a high-volume Gmail marketing account is approximately 90 to 120 days. After this point, even with perfect behavior, the accumulation of small negative signals like people deleting your email without opening it begins to weigh down the domain. The rotation process works like this. Every 30 days, Marcus should be spinning up a new secondary domain, such as https://www.google.com/search?q=marcusconsults-hq.com or https://www.google.com/search?q=reachmarcus.com, and beginning the 14-day warming process we discussed in Part 4. This creates a pipeline of fresh, high-reputation accounts. When an older account shows signs of a declining user affinity score, Marcus doesn't try to fix it. He simply reduces its volume to nearly zero, leaving it only for individual, one-to-one replies to maintain its activity, while shifting the bulk of his outbound efforts to the newly warmed account. This is called the rolling reputation strategy. But Marcus made a critical error that many people in 2026 still make. He linked his accounts through his browser footprint. Google's 2026 tracking capabilities are so advanced that they can identify a single user across multiple domains based on their hardware ID, their typing rhythm, and even the way their mouse moves across the screen. This is part of the Google Identity Graph. If Marcus logs into his burned account and his fresh account from the same Chrome profile, Google instantly bridges the two. The negative reputation from the burned account is transferred to the fresh one like a digital infection. Potential outcomes of this mistake include the immediate throttling of the new account, even if it has a perfect SPF and DKIM setup. To avoid this, you must use a hardened isolation environment. In 2026, this means using a dedicated anti-detect browser for each Google Workspace account. Each browser profile must have its own unique Canvas fingerprint, its own WebRTC configuration, and most importantly, its own dedicated residential proxy. A residential proxy is an IP address provided by an internet service provider to a homeowner, making your traffic look like it is coming from a regular house in a U.S. suburb rather than a data center. When Marcus sends an email from his San Francisco office, the Google server should see it as coming from a unique, residential-style connection for each account. This level of technical isolation is what separates the professionals from the amateurs in the 2026 Gmail ecosystem. We also need to look at the 421 error code. This is the specific signal Marcus should have been looking for. Historically, a 421 error was a generic temporary failure. In 2026, it is the primary tool Google uses for rate limiting. If Marcus sees a 421 error that says, "The user you are trying to contact is receiving mail at a rate that prevents additional messages from being delivered," it is often a lie. It usually means that Google has flagged Marcus's sending IP or domain as a high-velocity sender and is intentionally slowing him down to see how he reacts. A human sender would stop and wait. An automated bot would keep hammering the server. If Marcus's software kept trying to send during a 421 window, he was essentially confirming to Google that he was an automated script, leading to the permanent shadow ban. Step by step, the response to a 421 error must be an immediate 24-hour pause on all outbound activity for that specific account. During this pause, Marcus should manually log in and perform human-like actions. Search for something on Google, watch a YouTube video, or reply to a legitimate thread in his inbox. This resets the behavioral triggers in the Google AI. Potential outcomes of this manual intervention include a full restoration of the account sending quota within 48 hours. However, even with perfect rotation and isolation, you are still playing a defensive game. You are constantly trying to outrun an algorithm that is designed to catch you. This brings us to the ultimate question of this masterclass. Is using Gmail for email marketing actually worth the stress, the technical overhead, and the constant risk of losing your business identity? Or is there a way to take the lessons we have learned about Gmail's internal logic and apply them to a platform that actually wants your business? We have spent 9 parts deconstructing the mechanics of the Google ecosystem. We have looked at the authentication, the warming, the words, the links, the design, and the account rotation. You now have more knowledge about Gmail deliverability than 99% of the marketing agencies in the United States. But knowledge without a clear final strategy is just data. In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to deliver the definitive verdict. We are going to reveal the hybrid Gmail architecture, a specific setup that allows you to use Gmail for what it is best at, personal high-conversion outreach, while using a secondary bulletproof system for your scale. This is the strategy that the most successful companies in 2026 use to stay invisible to the filters but highly visible to their customers. You are one step away from the complete blueprint. Let's finish this. The hybrid Gmail architecture is the final evolution of a professional outbound strategy in 2026. To understand why this is the superior model, we have to look at Jennifer, a luxury travel consultant based in New York City. It is December 2026, and Jennifer has a list of 10,000 high-net-worth individuals who have opted in for her travel insights. If Jennifer tried to send 10,000 emails through a single Google Workspace account, even with the best warming and technical setup, she would eventually trigger the velocity thresholds we discussed. However, Jennifer knows that a mass marketing newsletter sent from a generic service like MailChimp often lands in the Promotions tab, where her busy clients rarely look. Jennifer's solution is the 2-tier hybrid system. Tier 1 is her scale engine. She uses a dedicated email service provider, or ESP, to send her broad-reach newsletters and large-scale announcements. This system uses a secondary domain, https://www.google.com/search?q=Jennifer-updates.com, which is technically separated from her primary business identity. This protects her main communication channel from the risks of bulk sending. But the real magic happens in Tier 2, the personalization engine. Jennifer uses her primary Google Workspace account, Jennifer@luxuryvoyages.com, for high-stakes, one-to-one communication and automated follow-ups triggered by specific actions her clients take in the Tier 1 emails. Historical trends in 2026 show that this split infrastructure approach results in a 45% higher response rate than using either system in isolation. Potential outcomes include maintaining a pristine sender reputation on your primary domain while still reaching a massive audience. Step by step, Jennifer's architecture works through a series of automated webhooks. When a client clicks a specific link in her Tier 1 newsletter, for example, a link about a new resort in the Maldives, a signal is sent to her CRM. This triggers a Tier 2 action, an automated, highly personalized email sent directly from her Gmail account 24 hours later. Because this second email is a single, direct send to an engaged user, it bypasses the Promotions tab and lands directly in the primary inbox, looking exactly like a personal note from Jennifer. This is where we must discuss the 2026 verification loop. Google's AI is now sophisticated enough to recognize the difference between an isolated email and one that is part of a larger conversation thread. By using the hybrid model, Jennifer is starting a thread in the primary inbox. When her client replies to that Gmail sent message, it creates a massive positive signal for her primary domain reputation. Case studies of luxury brands in 2026 indicate that this interaction-driven reputation is the most resilient form of digital authority. It is not about how many emails you send, it is about how many conversations you start. However, the cons of this model involve the complexity of the data synchronization. Jennifer must ensure that her two systems are perfectly aligned. If a client unsubscribes from her Tier 1 list, she must have a technical protocol in place to ensure they are also removed from her Tier 2 Gmail automation. In 2026, failure to synchronize these opt-outs is a major compliance risk. Historical trends show that regulators are increasingly looking at the totality of a brand's communication. If you continue to send personal-looking emails through Gmail after a user has unsubscribed from your marketing list, you are inviting a manual audit of your entire Google workspace. The second major con of the hybrid architecture is the cost of the technical stack. In 2026, maintaining multiple domains, dedicated proxies for your Gmail accounts, a high-end CRM, and a Tier 1 ESP requires a significant monthly investment. This is not a strategy for a hobbyist. It is for a business that views email as its primary revenue driver. But for those who make the investment, the results are transformative. Imagine Jennifer being able to send 10,000 newsletters on a Monday, and then having 300 highly targeted, automated personal conversations happening in her Gmail inbox by Wednesday. Now, let us look at the final piece of the 2026 masterclass: the sentiment analysis feedback loop. Most marketers look at open rates and click rates. Jennifer looks at the sentiment of the replies she gets in her Gmail account. In 2026, Google provides a hidden API for workspace users that can categorize the sentiment of incoming mail. By analyzing whether her replies are inquisitive, frustrated, or enthusiastic, Jennifer can adjust her Tier 1 content in real time. This creates a virtuous cycle where her mass marketing becomes more relevant because of the data she is gathering from her personal interactions. The potential outcomes of this strategy extend beyond just sales. It is about building a digital moat around your brand. In an era where AI can generate infinite content, the only thing that cannot be faked is a genuine, two-way interaction in a primary inbox. By using Gmail for what it was designed for, dialogue, while using an ESP for what it was designed for, distribution, you are playing by the rules of the 2026 ecosystem. You are giving Google exactly what it wants: high-quality, relevant content that users actually interact with. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, we have to address the ultimate verdict on using Gmail for email marketing. The pros are clear: the highest possible deliverability, a personal feel that AI cannot fully replicate, and a deep integration with the world's most powerful digital ecosystem. The cons are equally significant: strict technical limits, the risk of total account loss, and the need for constant, manual oversight of your reputation metrics. Using Gmail for marketing is like driving a high-performance sports car. It is fast, it is prestigious, and it can get you exactly where you want to go. But if you don't know how to handle the machine, you are going to crash. You now have the full blueprint. You know how to configure your DNS records to satisfy the 2026 authentication protocols. You know the 14-day warming schedule to prime your domain for success. You know which words to avoid and how to structure your HTML to bypass the 102 kilobytes clipping limit. You understand the necessity of account rotation and the power of the hybrid architecture. You are no longer guessing. You are operating with the precision of a professional digital architect. But the digital landscape of 2026 does not stand still. Even as you implement these strategies, Google is already testing the next generation of its AI-driven inbox, a system that will prioritize voice-transcribed emails and interactive, app-like messages inside the body of a Gmail note. The rules are changing again. What happens when the subject line becomes less important than the temporal validity of your content? What happens when Google starts charging for priority placement in the primary inbox of its most valuable users? In our next deep dive series, we are going to explore the emergence of Google's paid priority lanes and the specific technical markers that will allow you to bypass the new AI summarization features that are threatening to hide your content from your customers. We will also break down the specific integration between Gmail and LinkedIn that is creating a new category of outreach known as social email synthesis. You have mastered the infrastructure. Now it is time to master the future of the interaction itself. The loop is open, and the next level of this masterclass is just beginning.